We're here today with Judge John Braxton of the Court of Common Pleas of the First Judicial District.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, Judge. Again, it's really good to have you here. I'm looking forward to interviewing you.
Thanks, Len. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. When we start out at the beginning. So if you could tell us about your background and where you came from.
Well, surely. I was born and raised in West Philadelphia and went to Overbrook High School.
Yeah.
And then after Overbrook, I went on to Penn State University.
Yeah.
And while I was at Penn State, I got involved in, as many people were required to in those days, I got into the ROTC program.
Right.
And from that, I went, after graduation, to Vietnam as a first lieutenant, or second lieutenant to be exact, where I gave myself a promotion I didn't get. But that's my background. I really was born and raised in West Philly and went to all of the public schools there and then graduated from Overbrook.
And the neighborhood tends to be important in these interviews because each person and whoever's looking at it identifies with a certain neighborhood. So.
Well, there's no doubt I identify with the Overbrook area, and that's where many of my friends from my formative years and the friends I picked up in the Overbrook Winfield area.
It's a great neighborhood.
It is, and it's a great thing to have in your background because it gives you some insight into what it's like to live with all kinds of people.
Yeah, I agree. I went to St. Joe's, so it's I'm very familiar with it. I have friends over there. So you got back from Vietnam.
Right, and when I came back from Vietnam, and I guess that's the unique part of my story, I'm one of the few people that sits as a judge in this county who took the law school admission test while armed. I took it in Saigon.
No kidding.
No doubt. Back in 1967, I was in the 1st Infantry Division, and I asked my commander if I could get the time off to go to Saigon to take the exam. And he said, yes, but you don't go anywhere in Saigon in 67 without being armed.
Right.
So I took, and my sidearm was at my side while I took the exam. I didn't have the benefit that these young people have today with preps and so on. I left my unit in the field and came to Saigon and took the exam.
You're not going to find too many people taking the exams strapping.
No.
No.
So if you ask one of the things that sticks out in my mind, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, right.
And then I came back, and I was fortunate I got accepted to where I wanted to go. I went to Howard Law School in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that was the start of my legal career.
That's great.
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
And
what did you do after you became a lawyer? After you graduated?
Well, I was fortunate. After I became a lawyer, I took a position as an associate with Wolf Block Shore and Solis Cohen. Oh. And I was there for a couple of years and learned it was a very good firm. Yeah. And fortunately, one of the elders of that firm is still around. We celebrated the 100th birthday a couple of weeks ago of the head of the real estate department, a man that I worked with and worked for. And he's still around and kicking, and his mind is sharp, and it was a pleasure to see him and have lunch with him, yes.
That's great.
So, but that's my background professionally. That's where I got started.
Yeah.
And then after that, I had a variety of interesting experiences in the practice, and then met Ed Rendell and went into his district attorney's office and served as the chief of the municipal court unit. Now, in the municipal court unit, that's where all of the preliminary hearings got to be done, and that's where all of the new people coming in to the district attorney's office generally got their start. So I had to help to train those young people who went on, and some of them are very famous people today.
And virtually every arrest goes through that court
That's
first.
Correct. Yes. So that was another professional experience, and from there, I guess I went on and got involved in understanding what public life was about. Ed Rendell had a system where he had assistant district attorneys sitting throughout the city in various places, and people would come in with problems. And I got involved and got interested in public life and public service, and then the opportunity came up, I guess, to throw my name into the hat to be considered for a common pleas court appointment, and a governor by the name of Thornburg appointed me to the Court of Common Pleas in 1981.
Republican governor.
That is correct.
Yeah. And then would that be about when I met you first in family court? Or
that is correct. I came and I was assigned, I was first assigned, like most people were in those days, to the waiver program.
Okay.
People waived jury trials. I had lists every day.
Yeah.
And we tried them, stood them up and tried them.
A lot of cases.
A lot of cases.
Yeah.
And a lot of people going on probationary sentences and things of that kind because they were lesser felonies, non-violent felonies for the most part.
Okay.
And after spending my time there, I guess there was some need. Judge Cipriani, who lives on
Yes.
as a man that many of us will never forget,
He's a real gentleman.
had a shortage of judges. And in those days, it was very difficult to get transfers within our court to different sections. So Judge Cipriani was looking for some people to volunteer to come over to family court where there was a shortage. Now, I went over there on what was supposed to be a 6-month assignment, and it turned out to be many years. But what do you do when you're working with people? You feel as though you're doing something that's making a contribution,
Right.
and you're working in a court that has a high degree of collegiality.
Yeah.
Well, I was happy going to work every day. I was pleased with the work that I was doing, and the thought that we were in those days trying to get to the position where we had one judge, one family,
Yeah.
working toward that.
Yeah.
I felt as though I was part of a movement within the court to make our court more receptive to the people of the city of Philadelphia.
Exactly, and that was the idea behind the one judge, one family. The judge would get to know the family and deal with all the issues in the family.
Right. And those days, those were the beginning days of drug addiction, because we had alcoholism before that, but drug addiction came along,
Right.
and that changed the dimension of
Sure.
things. Not to mention, we've still had the problem of single-parent homes, but now it's not a problem, it's a reality
Yeah.
that we've learned to realize and learned to accept and learned how to work with.
Right.
And I was a part of a court that was attempting to do cutting-edge things, because Judge Cipriani believed in training, he believed in making sure that his judges had an opportunity to learn the newest things with regard to what we should be doing with regard to what the social scientists were saying that might be effective in helping to turn families around.
Yeah.
This came after the period where we started thinking of gangs and juvenile delinquent. Not as though we stopped thinking about it today,
Yeah.
but we started focusing on it back in those days.
That's exactly what I was doing. At
Yes,
the
so
time.
the focus began to change, and we began to look at the entire family that gave rise to these problems.
Yeah, well, that's great. Then you, of course, you moved on from family court. You spent quite a number of years there.
Yes.
You moved on.
And then I moved on, but I really didn't get an opportunity in Philadelphia to get a full variety of things, because we had a bench that didn't move very frequently.
Yeah.
In other words, people stayed in positions and there
Right.
weren't. And I'm not sure that there weren't other factors taken into consideration when people move from one section to another. But I used to say that hard work alone won't get you to a better job or
Okay.
to more exposure.
Right.
But what I got in Philadelphia County and in our family court has enabled me to go on throughout the state and to do other things. I don't know if you know, more recently that I've had a significant number of assignments outside of Philadelphia County, and I have been involved in a significant number of controversial cases.
Yeah, that I know. I mean, I've seen your name in the paper.
Right, because my assignments have been of a different variety. I've tried doctors for malpractice. I've tried doctors who are in the business of, were in the business of selling drugs and really polluting people through non-medical procedures when they had clinics that were supposed to be weight loss centers and things of that
Right,
kind, but in
right,
reality they were pill mills.
Yeah.
And I've tried that kind of thing. And I've gone on and done some, had some interesting cases with regard to domestic relations, because in some of our counties there are significant conflicts with the courts having to totally recuse themselves because prominent members of the community or prominent members of public offices and things had cases of divorce and things, and therefore the judges did not want to handle it. So
Okay.
they would bring me in as
Yeah.
the out-of-county judge.
And so is that what you're doing today? As
The answer to that is yes.
You're assigned
In other counties, in fact, my assignment now is I work in Lackawanna County, which is the city of Scranton
Thank you.
as the focus of it, but it's a beautiful place up in the mountains, and when I look out my office window, I'm really looking out at mountains.
well, that's not bad.
No, it's a
You
beautiful.
might find somebody wanting to take that place now, but,
Well, I've been in other places that people did want, and I had to move out of.
Okay.
I was out in York County,
Yeah.
which is right out along what many of us knew as the old Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah,
I was out
okay.
there, and believe me, they're still arguing land disputes where the Mason-Dixon line becomes the center. It's a major focus because It separates us from the state of Maryland, and many of those
Yeah.
people own on both sides of the state line.
Back then, yeah.
No, right now.
Okay.
In other words, if you've got a decent piece of ground,
Yeah.
the ground may have the line going
Line
through.
on it?
That's exactly right. You may own both sides.
How about that? You can be, feasibly you can stand on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line at one time.
Oh, you certainly can. And that's the other thing too. Now, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
As a city judge, I joke with my colleagues upstate, and I'm saying, you guys have me here settling land disputes, and I was born and raised in the city. And that's what I do now, because now I also get some of those, because prominent people and less than prominent people sometimes get involved in who owns what land.
Yeah.
So I have to make decisions with regard to the property rights of people.
Okay.
And that means I'm sometimes out looking at ground, looking at where these property lines really are.
No
because-
kidding.
Yeah, so it's been fun. It's been just a new horizon for me.
How about it? Because there's something, it sounds like there's something.
We don't do
new
that in
almost every
Philadelphia.
day. No.
When you live in a row house, the walls are there. You can't change those walls.
There are no lines.
On the other hand,
Or all lines.
and let me give you an example that we have things like adverse possession. The guy says, "Well, I've been here, Judge, 21 years.
Oh, right.
I'm claiming this land is mine."
Yeah.
So whoa, because people just come in on sometimes a non-adversarial approach. They're just coming with the petitions. Wait
Yeah.
a second, have you notified all the people who live around and have adjacent properties?
Yeah.
And sometimes they've done it, and sometimes they haven't done it, and so
Okay.
therefore they don't always have
Yeah.
adverse possession.
So, I mean, sometimes they built fences on somebody else's.
That's the other part,
property.
right?
Yeah. It must be interesting, as you say.
It is, because it's a wide variety of matters.
Yeah.
And, this part of God's creation, Pennsylvania has a lot of litigation in it.
Yeah.
We're adversarial.
Right here.
Right here.
Yes.
At Pennsylvania, I'm not saying Philadelphia County
Okay.
alone. I'm saying we are adversarial in nature, and so consequently, there's a lot for judges to do.
I wonder if that's a particularly Pennsylvanian way to be.
I don't know. I don't think the Quakers were that way, because
Well, that's
that wasn't the way they resolved things.
Yeah.
No. But more modern people have, we've had, as you well know from Philadelphia history,
Yeah.
the auto type situations where significant numbers of people had automobile accidents and the results of those. But
The
today,
insurance is higher and.
that's correct.
right.
Now, upstate, one of the problems they have is significant numbers of highway accidents because people are traveling at high rates of speed
Sure.
with big rigs, trucks turning over. There was one day I wanted to go out and get ketchup because a ketchup truck had turned over. And it was spoon all over the highway. It was ketchup everywhere. But no blood, just ketchup.
That's a gory scene, yeah. Well, I mean, so you like that, and you're enjoying the variety and the various new scenery and all that, especially for a West Philly guy, an Overbrook guy.
Yes.
Are there any of the cases that you've dealt with, and you just mentioned several, and I'm sure there must have been some that were of particular interest to the public, or some famous cases, or cases that were.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I think one of the things that the medical malpractice cases cause us all to pause for a minute, because
Sure.
you see the way hospitals and doctors sometimes make mistakes. And you say, in this day and age, how can these things happen? But you remind yourself that they're practicing medicine.
Yeah.
And the
right.
key is they're practicing. And they sometimes make mistakes.
Sure.
And when those mistakes arise, people do have a cause of action. Now, that is sometimes very disheartening because you see people lose their lives, and that and there's no price that you can put on that person's life.
No, I don't
Not
know
because
how
of,
they do
right. Once you have a daddy, you've got a daddy, but if daddy was on an operating table, and they treated him improperly.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah.
So I've seen those circumstances, and I
Okay.
felt badly for families.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing that I am particularly concerned about is that many times people have structured settlements. And these are approaches where a guy's going to get $500,000 over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, many times people now, because of the difficult economic picture that we just came through between 2008 and 2014, sometimes people with these structured settlements sell them at 25 cents on the dollar.
Oh,
Now that hurts me as a judge when I see that, because people are selling their futures for an immediate dollar.
Right.
And that dollar that they're going to get is going to be spent, and their future is going to have nothing, because if you don't have 40 quarters, then you can't collect Social Security.
Yeah.
And if Social Security is your
Oh.
only means of retirement income, this that you received as a result of the structured settlement was supposed to give you income for the rest of your life.
yeah,
But they sell it off cheap.
Huh.
They attempt to.
yeah. And they lose 75 cents on the dollar.
And the assurance of
later on.
of an economic future.
Right,
That's what hurts me when I see young people saying, well, Judge, I want to get a house, I want to get a car, I've got some debts,
yeah.
I want to pay these debts off. And they don't understand the value of having a guaranteed
Guaranteed.
stream of income
Right.
going forward in
Yeah.
their lives.
See, it's an important thing to do, is stop and think and look to the future.
Well, I do have the opportunity to cause them to think, to cause them to pause,
Yeah,
and then I weigh their legal right to.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I certainly think that they have to be knowledgeable. Many of them are not knowledgeable, because where in America is there a school system at the public school level
Yeah.
teaching people basic financial management? You see,
Yeah.
we also have problems here, as we had all across the country, with regard to the number of foreclosures we had more recently during
Right.
that difficult economic period
Hugely.
in our country.
right,
And part of it was that consumers were sold by people who were interested in an immediate commission. The consumer was sold more mortgage
yeah,
than they had the capacity to bear
yeah,
versus their income,
sure,
not taking into consideration the care and upkeep of the dwelling that was behind the mortgage.
yeah.
So consequently,
Which costs money down the line. if
that
you
is
don't
right.
know.
You have bartenders in $500,000 houses who said that they had tip income that they couldn't show.
Oh, right,
But they wanted a house that was a $500,000 house. Well, the $500,000 house takes more than just a mortgage payment to keep it up. You've got ground that goes along with that
Yeah.
half acre
Right.
that the $500,000 house sits on.
Sure.
And the house needs to be kept up, or the pool needs pool maintenance
Right,
each year
right.
before you open it.
and the 5 bathrooms also need.
That is correct.
Yeah,
So, but that was not factored in. The only thing factored in was meeting the mortgage payment.
yeah, and right now,
Yes.
yeah. I wanted to ask you, was there anybody who really, either directly or indirectly, who inspired you in your legal career?
Well, I first gave credit and honor to my professional exposure to Judge Nicholas Cipriani.
Yes.
Okay.
The gentleman of the court,
That is correct.
along with Matthew Carafiello, but.
Right. But,
And you.
no, I was here and I tried and I will always keep trying. But there were certain other people who reached out to new judges, like Judge Charlie Mararkey.
Yeah,
Okay, now, if you ask me, Charlie Mararkey was a role model for what I do today, because Charlie sat on this Court of Common Pleas in the First Judicial District,
right.
but he also sat on other courts as well.
Oh, did he?
Yes, he
said
did.
something similar? Yeah.
That is correct.
I didn't know that.
I know, because it's not something that's generally known.
Yeah.
But he was the one that gave me the encouragement to
Oh.
take other assignments
Oh, good.
outside of Philadelphia County.
Okay,
So those two men,
yeah,
and I would obviously have to say that, I guess Justice Nix was instrumental, because he gave me my very first out-of-county assignment. He sent me to McKean County to be the acting president judge up there.
okay.
Now, you don't even know where McKean County
I
is,
was
I'm
just
sure.
gonna ask you
Well,
though, I
there's-
swear.
that's okay. There's 67 counties in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And McKean County is in the northern tier, and it's 3 counties in from the west.
Oh, it's way out there.
That is correct. It's
Okay.
across from Bradford. But there is where I had one of my most interesting experiences. I was trying a homicide case,
Yeah,
and the the defendant had been found guilty by the jury, and I had come back another day and was getting ready to sentence the defendant. And he asked to go to the courtroom there is an old courthouse, and the courthouse courtrooms are on the second floor. We had about 3 feet of snow outside,
Yeah.
and this is right on the New York, Pennsylvania border, and west of Elmira.
Yeah.
And the defendant asked, and the sheriff asked on behalf if the defendant could go to the restroom. I said, of course.
Yeah.
He went to the restroom, raised the window, and jumped out of the second-story window into 3 foot of snow. Well, that was the first case I ever said, do we have any hounds in this county? And I ordered out the hounds. Get those hounds out there and get on that trail. Because he was in snow, you could catch the guy.
In the sleigh.
No, he didn't have a sleigh. But anyway, that's a rural county type
Yeah.
story. He jumped out the second floor window.
Into 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, that was piled up from various snowstorms.
It's not that easy to run through.
Right, it's difficult around here to find 3 foot of snow.
Right, that's true.
But he did.
Except on the sidewalk.
Right. But yes.
Well, I
never
really,
forget that.
I mean, I knew Nick Cipriani and I admired him, and he almost saved me, during my 40 years here. I was doing different things, and he kind of got hold of me, and he organized me and guided me along, and I always appreciated
He's a
that.
good guy.
And he was a real artist too. He had a good eye for things. Well, we spoke about some of your assignments and about some of the people you've looked up to. There weren't any big cases that strike you to. I mean, you've told us about some of your great stories about cases. I wondered about things. You're still working, and you're very active working. So I know that 2 things are important to you, and that is not to lead a sedentary life. I know you're very active physically. You work out a lot.
I do, but I think what I believe, I think that there's such a thing as the working retirement. I think it's good for our senior judges to continue serving.
Yeah.
Now, they don't have to work every day,
Right.
but they have to be given an opportunity to stay involved in providing service because they understand and have had a wealth of knowledge that comes through experience.
Right.
When I sit upstate, I find people are wanting to garner my experience. I did a video last year that's now being used by the Pennsylvania Bar Association to train lawyers on how to interview the child. Because I am a stickler for making sure it goes back to the old Nick Cipriani days.
Yeah.
Because I find that children are quite willing to tell me the truth. They don't, it's difficult for them oftentimes
Sure.
to tell scripted information continuously. Their parents may ask them to say, well, say you want to live with daddy.
Yeah. Right.
But once they said they want to live with daddy, they don't have any other lines to follow it up with.
There's no backup.
Because like, why do you want to be with daddy? Well, I want to be with daddy. Okay, well then we go beyond that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did was make a tape last year to show how one can properly interview a child.
Yeah.
And that's online and is presently being used.
And a lot of times that can be difficult for the child to testify in any way. And unfortunately, some of the cases are very, very difficult. But for them to be testifying and given that responsibility and in front of everybody.
That is right. But it's important for a judge to get the views because the Supreme Court of our state has said you've got to go through now a complete checklist when you're talking in custody matters.
Okay.
But one of them is you take into consideration the desires of the child.
Yeah.
But you have to ascertain the true desires of the child. Not that, someone says, well, I'm going to take you to Disney World if you say you want to come with me and you know you really want to go to Disney. I mean, what child doesn't want to go to Disney? And I'm an older guy and I still go. I want to go to Disney too. I've been, I go. And, but I think that making sure that people get a fair trial is really the heart of what I've attempted to do during my period of service. And getting a fair trial today means getting an opportunity to be heard. Doesn't mean that you're going to get what you think you ought to get because you want one thing or another.
Yeah.
It means going into a court that's going to allow you to present your case. Now, one of the things I've learned outside of the city of Philadelphia is the importance of collegiality amongst members of the bar. Because there's no reason for us to play brinksmanship or one-upsmanship. Let the facts of your case be presented and let the jury or the judge decide it.
Yeah.
But that happens in places where you know that you're going to see me again, Len. You know, and that's where we are, where I work, in areas where people know that they're going to interact with one another beyond just this particular case.
Right.
And when you have that degree of familiarity, you understand that your word has to be your bond. For once you step out of your word, you're discredited forever.
Right, sure.
And you don't get a chance to rehabilitate yourself.
You won't be trusted.
That is right.
Well, then that also implies that you have to be a pretty damn trustworthy person when you're dealing with people. I mean, if they get the access, they want to have, and they have to have, a lot of faith in what you're doing for them to be open enough to give you the real truth and the facts of the case.
I think you're right, and I think one of the things I try to do is to respect the communities that I serve in. So I take the time to go into the community, to stay, to learn, because a judge is supposed to understand where things are in the county.
Yeah.
And so I make it a point of always eating dinner in the counties. My wife goes with me on many of my assignments, and so we participate in the community. Last night I went to a meeting of families who have problems with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And they didn't know me from Eve, but I went to the meeting because people in my court had said they go to such and such.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know about it because I just wanted to see what goes on in these meetings.
Yeah.
And to understand it. So when I hear it again in a courtroom, I know
You'll know
what's
what
going
they're
on.
talking about. Yeah.
And it makes me, I think, a more effective judge. I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn as much as I need to learn in order to decide a particular case.
Well, isn't that part of staying active too? You're keeping your mind active.
That is also true.
You're exercising your brain, your intellect.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you have to see the beauty of other people's lives. That's the part, that's the challenge, because one of the things I don't do when I'm in other counties is say what we do in Philadelphia. Because that is an automatic presumption that what we do is right and better.
Yes.
No, I'm saying, how do we do things in this county?
Yeah.
And then how can we do those things more effectively? Well, have you thought about such and such? You suggest as a mere way of letting the person think about whether or
Yeah.
not something can be improved,
Right.
rather than coming, well, let me tell you how we did things.
Yeah, right.
No, I've never said those words.
No, and I think people get resentful from that.
Well, every place isn't the same. Pennsylvania is 67 counties,
Yeah.
and I've probably worked in about 18 of them.
How about that?
Yeah.
I know I had this all memorized, 60 judicial districts, 67 counties. Some of the judicial districts have a president judge, and he's the president judge of himself. And, each county varies widely.
But let me share this one with you.
Good.
Because I've been in judicial districts which are multi-county, and they don't have the same holidays. Now, that's a difficult situation to work in. I want you to know that it's difficult. When I land and I'm saying, okay, I come in, no, I just say, wait a minute, I'm going to start a jury trial. I need to know, are you from this county or are you from the other side? Because the judicial district encompasses the two counties, and the people come from the two counties or
Yeah,
one.
right.
And I need to know if you're going to be working with me on Good Friday or
Right,
whatever
yeah.
other day that's a holiday. It's different.
Because it seems like you might know what the different holidays are for the different counties.
I don't. I don't internalize those
Are you
things.
sure?
No, I'm
Tell
past
me.
that. No. But I can tell you that one of the things in Lackawanna County,
Yeah.
we never close the courthouse. So I have to get there the
Okay.
day before I'm going to start trial, because whether there's snow on the ground
I see.
or ice on the ground, the courthouse will be open and people will be expected to be in.
Okay,
So I'm always in on the Sunday before the Monday.
especially the judges are supposed to be there.
Oh,
yeah.
they've got to be. They
Yeah.
know it. It's
Right, yeah.
So there's never. But once I've had a lawyer call the court administration and say, "Well, the weather's bad down in Philadelphia. Is that judge going to be up there?" That judge isn't going to be there. They said to him, "Pardon me, but Judge Braxton is here in Lackawanna County. He knows."
Right now.
And the guy's sitting in Philadelphia, so we're trying to avoid the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So,
No.
but that's a little joke in the county. Yes.
Go
But I've
ahead.
also, but as I was talking about cases, I've had significant tax cases as well, because in some counties, they have to have an independent judge review their tax structure based upon whatever the circumstances are. The city council may be attempting to, in one portion of a county, to increase the tax, a tax of some nature, and rather than the judges there look at it, they'll ask an outside judge to do it. That's the other kind of thing that I may have an opportunity to do because I'm sitting outside of my own.
Yeah, so you may be sitting outside of there.
That is
County also.
right. I'm from outside, so
Yeah.
therefore I'm neutral to the tax. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be subject to it.
Yeah,
So that's what makes me be able to enables my ability to look at it objectively.
right. That must happen fairly often, doesn't
Well,
it?
no, it depends on whether or not you're a distressed county or not. It depends. Because some taxes that are imposed are clearly permissible taxes,
Yeah,
but there are others that may be permissible but not imposed in a fair. You impose a tax on some people but not all the people, and you have
Yeah.
to explain why.
well, that requires you to know an awful lot about the law for a lot of different subjects.
Well, be willing to research and have them. That's one of the
Yeah.
things. I've had good support people working for me.
Yeah.
My good law clerks have helped me get to the focus of the issue.
Good, that's excellent.
That's what makes a difference.
I think, it's always good to have good people behind you. I know the people that have worked for me, they're the ones I thank for making me look good. If
Well, I
ever
tell
have.
people that they're part of my team. They're not behind me. They're with me.
Good,
Then there's a difference
Yeah.
because I'm here temporarily. I won't be here forever. I don't have a 10-year license to
Sure.
be here. So consequently, I have to do the right thing the first time.
yeah. Well, that's a good way to look at it anyway.
I try to look at it that
Yeah.
way.
Is there anything else you want to share with us today?
My, well, let me say this: there's no place like home, and Philadelphia is my home. So although we're
Yeah.
talking about other places,
Yeah,
I feel honored and privileged because of the training, background, and experiences I've had here.
mhm,
To be able to go and to serve in other counties
mhm.
is richly rewarding.
Good, that's great.
That's the thing. And to understand, Pennsylvanians are beautiful people. They really are. If you
Good.
take the time to go into their communities and just share what they have to offer.
Huh.
And all of our communities have something to offer.
That's wonderful.
And I've enjoyed it
Yeah,
since 2010.
okay. Well, you've been doing this for a little while then, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me do you have a particular moment that might be your proudest moment of your legal career?
Well, let me say this. I'm always happy when the Superior Court or the Supreme Court clearly recognizes the approach that I have taken
Uh-huh.
as being lawful and that which they will sustain.
Okay,
So that to me is rewarding when I get my notice that the Superior Court has upheld my decision, because
Yeah.
I am deciding cases in a variety of areas that I'm learning and working my way through.
Yeah.
And it's not just the same thing.
Yeah.
So consequently, and I feel as though I'm truly doing the work of a judge when you realize that a judge of the Court of Common Pleas, the Court of General Jurisdiction in our state,
and it is general where you are.
that is correct. And I get a variety of things that I have to make decisions upon.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're doing a bang-up job, I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm enjoying it, and my president judges want to keep me, so I feel good.
And you're learning a lot at the
Of
same
course.
time. And you're giving the people of Pennsylvania a lot of benefit.
I'm trying,
I appreciate
and
it.
I enjoy it. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks
It's
for
been a
coming.
pleasure being here with you.
This has been a great interview. I appreciate your coming.
Thanks.